So when you say it's different now, when you do have some contact or a letter or an email, can you enjoy that?
I absolutely can. And in fact, I had that happen this week. I won't go into a lot of detail, but I got a really wonderful Father's Day card from my daughter, who I've been alienated, estranged from for about 11 years, on and off. And there was still some dysregulation figuring out how I might respond most adequately to that. But I reached out to people in my program and got some wisdom and talked to my spouse and got some wisdom and advice. And I was able to really, really, truly enjoy that letter for its meaning and where she is in her process.
My name is Lawrence Joss, and welcome to the Family Disappeared podcast. And today we have a wonderful panel. We have some regulars coming back. We got Anna and Stephen coming back and their alienated parents. And we are going to be talking about what not to do. We're going to be sharing some of our experiences and insights about what we've done in the past that hasn't been useful and what our perspective is now. And you're going to hear a lot of insights through the lens of recovery. And when we're talking about recovery, we're talking about a support group. And this can be our support group, which is Parental Alienation Anonymous. There's free meetings every week, 18 or 19. All the information is in the show notes, and both of these folks are in the recovery community. And God, they've evolved so incredibly much since I've met them, and they're doing some really really wonderful, profound work. And they're here to share that with the community, and that's a vulnerable, challenging thing at times. And I'm so incredibly excited to have that conversation with them. And it's fantastic. The nuances we get into today is yeah, you don't want to miss this stuff. And if you're new to the community, welcome. Um, you can always reach out to us at familydisappeared@gmail.com. Let us know some topics you'd like us to dig into deeper, panels you'd like us to have, special guests. If you know anyone or you think you'd be appropriate to be a guest on talking about recovery and changing your life, we'd love to hear from you too. And please remember to like, share, subscribe. Yeah, the more support we get, the more people we can help. And we are a 501c3 nonprofit. There's a link in the chat if you feel like you have some extra resources to contribute. We can use any help we can get. And with that, let's jump on into the show. So, on a what not to do topic, this is kind of a funny story. Is before I started the Family Disappeared podcast, a couple years earlier, I started doing some videos and not a podcast, but I was sharing stuff out on social media and recording videos and editing them myself and stuff. And I was calling a Papa Doc, and I was coming from a place of some hurt and confusion and lack of boundaries. And I was making videos to my kids saying, "Hey, like I love you, I miss you, I think you're incredible. I'd love to help you, support you on your recovery journey, and I'm very happy to take care of whatever that looks like for you." And I'm like, alluding to, get some therapy if you want to go do this or you want to go do that. And there was all kinds of stuff in there that now that I look back at it makes me shudder. And this was literally 2-3 years this podcast started. And now this podcast is really about recovery. It's not about trying to fix someone else. It's about really looking at myself and being in my own seat. Yeah. And so what not to do is don't start recording stuff and putting stuff out there that's trying to tell other people what other people are doing wrong and what your kids should do. Like, I think it's really important to take responsibility for our own lives and talk about our experiences and what we've done and what we could improve. And that's my big what not to do. And God, I pulled down all the Papa Duck stuff that I can't even go back and watch that stuff. So, with that being said, let's jump into the panel and see what happens next. So, I'm so excited to have Anna and Stephen on the show with me today. They are regulars, and this should be a great show on what not to do. And we've had this discussion several months ago. So, if you haven't seen part 1 and 2, please go check those out. And we are going to be doing part 3 and 4 in the next 2 episodes. So, Anna, if you can please reintroduce yourself to the community.
Hi everyone, I am Anna, alienated mother of two adult sons, a 21-year-old and a 19-year-old. No contact with them since December 2016. I am Happy to be on the podcast and joining the conversation this morning.
Thank you, Anna. And Stephen, can you please go ahead and introduce yourself to the community?
Sure. Thanks, Lawrence. I'm Stephen, and I am excited to be here today. Alienated, estranged dad to a 24-year-old daughter. It's been about 11 years, and alienated from a 19-year-old son who's a freshman in college.
Thank you, Stephen. So, we're going to try something a little bit different today. We're actually going to do a quick check in. And what a check in is for anyone out there in the community that's not familiar is we're just going to share a couple minutes where we're at, what energy is coming in, if we're feeling anxious about taping the podcast or anything else in the world that's going on. And it's a really great way for everyone to just kind of arrive and the garbage bag and clean out and air out the mattress or do whatever. But it's just a way for us to just kind of let each other know where we are. So, Anna, would you like to check in first?
Thank you, Lawrence. Yes, I would. We had a set of questions and in order to prepare ourselves for the conversation so that we were a little bit primed. And I was looking through those the last couple of days and giving some answers and happy with what I thought I could come up with, what I do come up with, and how I choose to live my life in recovery. And then when I woke up this morning to do the podcast, I could feel some anxiety and my heart's pounding a little bit. And I was just sharing with Lawrence before we started recording that I realized as I kind of read through my answers that I'm answering the questions from up here and not from my heart. And my heart is taking over right now, and it's made me realize that what I do when I'm missing my kids, when I'm not so happy with my reality, is that I suppress my emotions and I intellectualize things. And so it's interesting for me to bring that combination to the table this morning. And one of the questions that Lawrence had asked was about talking about a happy memory. And when he'd asked that, that really tripped up this whole emotional piece for me because my head went to darker spaces and to a lot of sadness, and that it feels like an area of growth for me. And I did find something in my heart, and there are lots of happy stories, but it wasn't the first place I went. So I'm curious to explore how that is this morning and how the conversation evolves, because this is one of the challenges for me is allowing my emotions to come and go, and how do I deal with those in recovery. So thank you for the opportunity to share, Lawrence.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you for sharing that a little bit and hearing a little bit of anxiety and curiosity about what's coming up. You connecting really to your heart, which sounds really sweet because so much of us get lost in our head and in those thoughts, and it becomes kind of like a prison, and there's no creativity in it. So I'm hearing the creativity starting to move and flow and the energy moving, which is beautiful. And that's what the conversation's about. And that's what recovery is about. And thank you for that. And Stephen, you want to do a quick check-in?
Sure. Yeah, actually, there's some similarities with Anna, but it's also different. So it's interesting, the subject of the show is what not to do. And, I found myself flooded with a litany of a list of things not to do that I was already thinking about. And then I woke up this morning and told my spouse that I was, going to be recording a podcast and what the subject was. And she lovingly added a few more things not to do based on our personal experience, which then kind of was like, oh, felt I was already kind of feeling maybe a little bit of a gut punch, just thinking about some of these things, and that kind of, I would say, added maybe a slight level of anxiety to it, just to have someone else share maybe some things that weren't so great about approaches in the past and whatnot. So that was one thing. And then to Anna's point, Lawrence, when you said, I want to, maybe mention a happy time. And I know, I was married for 25 years by the time the divorce was final. And I remember that there were lots of happy times with my kids. Like I know there were, um, but it's strange. It's almost like my mind has fogged out some of those really joyful and happy times, and I felt this nervousness inside, just trying to recollect, like, a purely happy moment. And oh my gosh, I felt, you know, I was just like, what's going on here? And in retrospect, after sleeping on it, I did think of something that sort of, um, in retrospect is very funny and goes to the personality of my son, which I really love. So I did come up with something, but gosh, at first, um, that brain fog is, about the things before alienation is sometimes, overwhelming. So yeah, thanks for letting me check in.
Thank you for that, Stephen. And I got a chuckle out your spouse adding to the list, which makes a lot of sense. Our partners and friends definitely get to add to our list on stuff that we can't see sometimes. And yeah, and asking for a funny story, even though I'm the one that was asking for everyone to bring a little something to the show to break it up a little bit. It's challenging for me too to think, huh? Yeah, like what was funny and what funny story do I have that includes all the kids, which I found to be a challenging part of the question. And I'm going to do a quick check in. I am feeling, I'm waking up feeling a little bit anxious too. And I did an interview the other day that relates directly on what not to do. And it kind of like highlighted some items that I hadn't really thought about and I hadn't really considered. And we're going to be bringing up some of those questions today. So, yeah, I'm still processing and moving that stuff through my body. So it's really appropriate that we're having a podcast on what not to do. And there's several topics that I have that I want to discuss, like specific topics. But what I want to ask first from the two of you is what not to do. What came up for you that might be unique to you or part of your experience that you'd like to share, and then Anna and I will add on to that if we've had something similar, and then I'll rotate to the other person. And Stephen, is there something you want to share about what not to do that's really alive for you and might be useful to the audience?
Yeah, I don't know that it's unique necessarily. I guess it might be unique, but I'll throw it out there anyway, and others can, think about that in retrospect. But one of the biggest mistakes that I made, was making the alienation about me. And what I mean by that is that when something would go, you know, bad, there was some disconnection. It would be the type of thing where I would be asking the question, what did I do wrong? Trying to, because it was all about me, therefore, what did I do wrong? What could I do to fix it? It was all about me, kind of me, very, self-oriented. I'll put it nicely, self-oriented. And what I've realized in retrospect is, and this is before, recovery and doing some work, is that when the alienation becomes all about me, what I did wrong, what I could have done differently, what I'm losing, what I'm missing, it's certainly not about the kids. And they're the ones that are suffering in the alienation process. And so that's been a big learning for me, but that's a big what not to do. And I think maybe just on the heels of that is when things start going right, when you have a small victory or a small win, really taking that in stride and really relishing those small points of connection and the small things that happen, rather than kind of experiencing that wonderful thing, but then immediately thinking all of it's kind of the doomsday, like, well, this connection happened, but that's just for temporary, and this is just going to go right back to what it was, right? Kind of that, um, catastrophic, kind of, negative, maybe pessimistic, if you want to call it, thinking about things that were positive. So then I couldn't really enjoy the positive things that were happening along the road, like getting a card or getting a letter or getting a text. They were kind of just small items in a overall horrible situation, right? They didn't make a mark. It was kind of like they were glossed over, which has been a little bit of a pattern in my life, to gloss over, moments of success and just put my head down and keep working. So I would say those two things for me.
Thank you for that, Stephen. And those are two big things. And the first thing I heard was it's all about me and how I'm feeling and what's going on with me and what's happening. And what I'm hearing in that part is instead of leading with empathy and really understanding what the kids are coming with to you and where they're at, you just went into the default mode about, I guess, abandonment, fear, longing, all that kind of stuff came up, and it really blocked out your ability to really hear where they were at. I guess that's what you were saying.
Oh yeah, it brought up, it pushed all the buttons, all the emotional, buttons, family of origin buttons. It pushed all that, and unfortunately, initially, I was not in a place and didn't have the support and the recovery to be able to step outside of that and go, hold on a second. This isn't about me. This is about what they're dealing with, they're suffering with. Absolutely.
Wonderful. Yeah, I love that you bring up that point, and I got more to say about that. But before I do, Anna, let's just concentrate on that first point that Stephen made, and we'll get back to the victories and getting some kind of contact as a second part of this conversation. But the all about me idea, how does that relate to you, and does that resonate with you at all?
It does resonate with me. I remember when I first joined the PAA, the 12-step program, that was brought to my attention. Not when I first joined, but once I'd been in it for a little while, I didn't realize that the program would be about focusing on my part in the whole situation, because I did come in feeling like I'd been wronged, feeling that there was a lot of injustice that was going on, and feeling like my side of the story was very clean and everything was someone else's fault. So it took recovery work for me to start to think, okay, I did contribute to the family dynamic, and I brought dysfunction into the relationship, and I raised my kids in a dysfunctional way because I came from dysfunction myself, which is not me trying to lay blame at anyone's feet, but I really hadn't examined that before I came into the program. I felt like I'd been fighting a battle on my own and I was in the right and everyone else was in the wrong. And program has allowed me to find some balance around that and different perspectives. I always gain from the different perspectives in program, and I needed to hear it because I was very much out of balance in terms of that, and embracing that idea allows me to walk through my recovery in a different way, in a more balanced way, and takes me off the cycle that I was very much in of being very upregulated. So my curve is a lot more smooth these days because I can adopt that. It doesn't mean that it's always easy, and I still have moments when I get upset about it or angry about it, but I appreciate the balance that it brings. And it was stunning to me at the beginning because I thought, what? I didn't do anything wrong. I've been trying to save everyone. That was my internal perspective at the time, and it's very different now.
Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of perspective changing as you're working on yourself and as you're working through the program. And again, for anyone that's new to the community, we have a free 12-step program that supports parents, grandparents, young adults, adults that have been alienated, estranged in any kind of way. And it's really a great way to do some interpersonal work and start to look at yourself. And what I hear you, Anna, saying is as you start to look at yourself, you start to see different perspectives and you start to see where you were part of the family system that was dysfunctional and that helped generate some of this energy that has unfortunately led to a family system that is completely fractured.
Yeah, that's been my experience, and it's been very humbling, but it's also allowed me to explore different areas for me in terms of the dysfunction that comes from my biological family, and that's helped me to heal the parental alienation piece. It's gone beyond that for me. My recovery has expanded because of that kind of awareness, which is both awesome and challenging because it can feel like a lot of work sometimes.
Yeah, thank you for that. And you also said something really interesting that I think is really important to touch on is that you were trying to fix people. You were trying to fix, help, do the right thing, whatever variation that came in. And that relates back to what Stephen's saying is making it all about me. Like I think it's harder for us to see when we're trying to fix or help that that's still making it all about ourselves because we're feeling an emotion, we're getting dysregulated. And if I can just fix or change or help the situation, I'm not really trying to help you. I'm just trying to regulate my nervous system through you. So that's what I'm experiencing as you're talking. And I don't want to make up words for you, but is that kind of like what you're feeling in your body and the actual process that you were going through now that you have a little bit of visibility to that?
that resonates with me. And one of the things I was thinking about when I was thinking about the questions for this recording was that I've spent my life looking for external validation. So that for me, that's tied in with it as well. It's trying to source my happiness and my comfort and soothe my nervous system through other people. So then I automatically, my default setting is to essentially not to blame other people necessarily, but to look to other people rather than looking at myself. Because I'm not comfortable. I'm not familiar with doing it. I'm becoming more familiar with it, but it's not been my default setting. So it's interesting to explore those spaces.
Yeah, that's very beautiful and real. And for me, like it showed up in different kinds of ways. For me, it showed up in spiritual pride. And my sponsor in the 12-step program pointed out the idea to me that I was doing like all these different aspects of work, and then I actually thought that I knew something about something, and then I could actually teach my kids or show my kids a light or point them in a direction instead of just living my life and being a role model. So like I feel that same kind of way, and it's interesting, like we all have it come up in different kinds of ways, and it's really tricky and shadowy, and in those instances where we make it all about ourselves in all these different ways and all these different kind of strategies, it doesn't give the kids an opportunity to be heard and seen. And I'm going to bring up this extra point that I want to continue this line of conversation. I was recording a podcast with someone and they spoke about splitting. And usually when we talk about splitting, we're very clear to identify our kids when they split. And splitting is basically that the kids can't live in two different realities at the same time. So at a certain point, they got to kind of split off and just pick the reality or stay in an environment that they can continue to live in, right? And it's very interesting in this conversation that I was having. My guest brought up the idea of we're splitting too. Like we can only handle so much as a parent that's dealing with all this emotional turmoil, and at a point we get overloaded. And when we split, we can't necessarily see our kids, and we can't necessarily lead with empathy, and we can't necessarily make great decisions. And the thing that she was talking about is she was talking about going to graduation, like some like events that are seminal but quite benign. And she was saying, as a parent, when I'm fully grounded and in my body and my kids graduate, and I'm going to go, and you know, if they don't want me there, I'm going to stand in the back and I'm going to go anyway. But when we're split off as parents, then we get into this place: should I go, shouldn't I go, is this right, is this wrong? And in that place, like we can't be about anyone else but ourselves. So I think some of the stuff we're talking about is we're splitting off too when we're overwhelmed or we're trying to regulate ourselves or something like that. And then we miss the kids. I don't know. Does that resonate with anyone? This is kind of like a new thought and something that's just kind of coming up for me. And let's go back to you, Stephen. It's been a while since we heard your voice.
That's okay. I wanted to just, if I could, just for a second, because Anna brought up something, when she was talking, all I kept thinking is hearing in my head was just this kind of recovery. It's not a slogan, but sort of is like recovery is an inside job, not an outside job. And when you guys were talking, I just that kept coming up in my head that this is, that's really what we're talking about, right? Is that this is an inside job. We're doing that work on ourselves. It's not an outside job with everybody else and our kids and controlling them and doing all the things that we do. So anyway, that thought came up. But yeah, um, the splitting. I mean, I would say for sure, I've only thought about it relative to the kids, but now that you're mentioning it, definitely, the alienation started for me around the time of separation. And yeah, it was not something that was planned. I was how many years into a relationship at that point? 20 some years into a relationship. And yeah, I definitely think there's something there that we get caught up in our own dysregulation and unresolved family of origin issues and all those kind of things. And I think you're right. When we're in that place of dysregulation and dysfunction and upregulation and anxiety and stress, we're not 100% available to understand how that splitting might be occurring for our kids, who are the true people who are harmed and affected by alienation.
And what about you, Anna? Does it resonate with you at all? The idea that we split too, and we kind of like mirror our kids at times, also when we got dysregulated or stuff came up.
It does resonate with me, Lawrence. Wow. I've thought about it a little bit with the kids, although not so much until this morning. But yeah, I know for myself, even when my family was all together, now that we're having this discussion, I can feel how disembodied I was, if that's the same kind of thing. My nervous system felt so challenged, and I felt like I was split in lots of different directions. It's even hard. It feels foggy as well thinking about it when the family was still together. But when I had to leave, I remember noticing the split in my kid, and I hadn't even been aware that that's what it was until we're having this discussion right now. But I think I probably still do it now. I think I have trouble inhabiting my body and the emotions because I'm still feeling nervous in this conversation because it feels very emotional, and it's really hard. It's reminding me how difficult it is to talk about my relationship with my kids, and it's bringing up guilt, and it's bringing up some shame, and it's bringing up feelings of did I let them down, and the splitting piece really hit me here. And recovery is telling me as I'm saying this, I can be compassionate for my younger self and my less recovered self and how I handled it. But it's bringing to my awareness how foggy my memory is and how much I probably was disembodied and stepping in and stepping out. And I can feel the difference now because of recovery, because I spend more time feeling more grounded, feeling more present. And that really highlights for me what I think you're sort of pointing at in this discussion, the piece around the adults splitting and not just the kids. It's really interesting.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and literally, I did the interview yesterday, so I'm still chewing on this, and I will say for me as I'm kind of like processing this, like it's okay that I split sometimes, and even though I split sometimes with my kids, it doesn't make me a bad parent. It just makes me a human being. And recovery kind of like shines light on it, and I'm working on it. So if you're struggling and you're in the middle of this and you're noticing this stuff, I don't think this is about being perfect. I think it's about noticing. Then we try, and it changes a little bit. And I'm just going to share this quick analogy with everyone because it's important. And I might have shared it before. So one of my teachers speaks a lot about speed limits, and they're like, "Hey, you can drive your car 30, and when you get to 31 or 32, you start splitting off because you're going too fast. There's too much information coming in. There's too much emotional input. So you split off or you cut off at 31 miles an hour, and then you're not really present. And the way to work with that is through recovery, whether it's through something like PAA or through whatever recovery method you want. You start to build resiliency and you start to build resources, and then you stay longer in the conversation, kind of like Anna was saying, and you stay more embodied. And there's still a point where you get overwhelmed and you split off. So I love the analogy of the speed limits, and I got to work on my recovery and my internal resources to be able to stay with a conversation a little bit longer. So I think it's a wonderful thought, and we got to come back to that in a show because there's a lot there. And yeah, I'm remembering some proms and some other things that I made a decision not to go to because my daughter had asked me not to go to. And I remember crying in the garage and talking to my sponsor for hours. And I think if I was not split off, I would have gone anyway and bared witness to it. So I feel some regret and some shame too in not have making a different decision there. But there were no resources out there to let me know that that was even possible. So okay, that's a good one. What a question to start with. So let's all just take a breath here. That's a lot of information in the first couple minutes. Whew, okay, if you're out there, take a nice deep breath. Maybe if you can, just take a breath into your belly and then bring it up into your chest. And just, let's do a couple of those. Whew. Okay, so there's a second part of what you shared, Stephen. You shared the idea that there were some victories and some moments that felt really good, and you couldn't necessarily enjoy them because you were just on to wanting more, or just stuck in fear that you weren't going to get more. Right? Is that what you're saying? Just give us a quick couple seconds recap, and then we'll see what Anna has to say about that.
Yeah, I think where that comes from is not being, for me, it was not being fully present with the thing that was happening at the moment. So, alienation seems so overwhelming and so all encompassing at times that I think the weight of it just sometimes colors those small victories, like getting a really great text or getting a phone call or asking, to, hey, can you come visit? I've had all those things happen as alienation has kind of ebbed and flowed. And yeah, I think absolutely the just being sort of grounded in the present and having the context of a long period of alienation can sometimes color even those really awesome things that happen. It's different now, but that's where it was early on. Yeah,
So when you say it's different now, when you do have some contact or a letter or an email, can you enjoy that?
I absolutely can. And in fact, I had that happen this week. I won't go into a lot of detail, but I got a really wonderful Father's Day card from my daughter, who I've been alienated, estranged from for about 11 years, on and off. And I was able to, there was still some dysregulation figuring out how I might respond most adequately to that. But I reached out to people in my program and got some wisdom and talked to my spouse and got some wisdom and advice. And I was able to really, really, truly enjoy that letter for its meaning and where she is in her process and even what that might mean for the future, but not getting dysregulated about it. So yeah, it's a completely different story today.
That's awesome, and I'm so excited for you that you got something so meaningful and that you were able to enjoy it because it's an interesting thing about being in community is like when someone has a victory, like yeah, they get to enjoy it, and I think so many of us get to like kind of like sink in there with you, and like I feel like I'm holding your hand and we're walking down a little path, and like hey, we got a letter. Like it's not it's your letter, but it feels like it's a community victory. Like this is a cumulative universal pain and energy that we're working with, so that pain is universal, but that love and those victory and the hope is universal too. So I think that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, Stephen. And what about you, Anna? Do you relate to that at all about victories and not being able to stay present with them because you had other longings and other stuff going on, and what does that look like today?
It feels very mixed, Lawrence. I haven't had contact in terms of victory. I haven't had contact with my kids for quite some time now. But I was thinking about an instance a few years ago with one of my sons where I happened to find out where he was working, and I decided that I wanted to go and see him. And I was in program at the time, and I got a lot of advice around it and a lot of support, and I did work to prepare myself for it, I should say. I knew I would be taking him by surprise, and it wasn't an ideal scenario because if the roles reversed, my nervous system would be shot all over the place. But my instinct, like my maternal instinct, I don't know. I just wanted to do it. I wanted to show myself and to show him I could be in the same space as him without losing my nerve, to be able to hold space. And I just wanted to see. I wanted to see what he looked like. And so, long story short, I won't go into the details, but it was an interesting combination because it took a lot of energy for me to be there and be present. I had a friend with me, so she helped to keep my feet on the ground. And I ended up trying to talk to him. He wasn't comfortable doing that, but at the same time, I think because the whole scenario, even though it was, I think, probably very confronting for him and it was confronting for me, I worked very hard to keep calm, to not be melodramatic in front of him. And when we did share just a few words, I could feel, this is going to make me cry, I think, I could feel that he was doing his very best to survive, and he had asked me to leave at that point, and my sense was that he needed me to leave because he was doing everything in his power to hold himself together, and if I didn't go, he was going to lose his stuff. And I didn't want to do that for him, and so I left. And it was very charged, it was very emotional, but it also felt very healing too, because it reminded me of how I used to be able to be with him and how it felt when I was with him when he was younger, where we could just be in the same space together, and it didn't have to be big conversations, it didn't have to be screaming, it didn't have to be anything, and we could just be together. But even, yeah, as I'm talking about it now, it was a lot of work and it was hard, but at the end of it, I was proud of myself. And I also thought, wow, I really put that poor kid on the spot. Like, that's in his workplace, he had to hold his crap together. I probably would have been really pissed if it was me, and maybe he was. I don't know, but he did everything in his power to keep control, and I think he had a level of trust in me. He sensed, because I didn't run up to him as soon as I saw him and confront him. I continued eating my food and just let him do his work. And then I did corner him in the end because I wanted to try and talk to him. Um, I sensed that he thought, okay, mum's not going to go overboard here. If I can just get through these next 10 minutes, it'll be okay. So it was a very interesting exercise. And it has a mixture, I think, of what you're talking about, the piece around I was proud of myself. It was upregulating for me. It was upregulating for him. But it was also, I wanted to show him that I could do it and that I loved him. And I loved him enough to respect his space. And I hope that that's part of the message that he took away with him. But it's challenging. This work is so challenging. And how do we communicate with our kids or not? And how much do we go forward and how much do we pull back? I don't have the answers for that. I struggle with that on a regular basis.
Well, that's a powerful story, and just the courage that it takes for you to show up, and also it sounds like you navigated it in a really useful way. You know what I mean? Like the whole situation is charged. Like, what's the right decision? What's wrong? The wrong decision? Who knows? But just showing up, being as calm as you could, and taking a cue and leaving, and yeah, letting him bear witness to that too sounds like a wonderful thing. And I don't know. It sounds like a good thing to me, but you really don't know exactly what's happening. But that's neat, and that you had the support of recovery. Because if we go into those situations without support, without resource, without resilience, at least for me, I blow stuff up, man. I tear down buildings. I blow up cars, and yeah, that's really powerful. And I'd say for me, like I got a text maybe a year and a half ago from my middle daughter right around my birthday, and her grandfather had just passed away, so I think that might have precipitated some of the connection. And I was so hungry when I got that text that I just wanted more. Wanted to connect. I wanted to talk on the phone. I wanted to see her in person, and I just didn't meet her where she was at with that text. And again, that's just really come up for me since the interview from yesterday, and that's like a cutting off moment. Is again, like I got this text that was great, and it was shocking and surprising, and we got to text a little bit, and then I just needed more. And now that I'm thinking about needing more, there's a term in Buddhism which is called the hungry ghost. You know what I mean? The hungry ghost just keeps on eating, and it's because it's a ghost and it doesn't really have a belly. It can just take in everything, and it can take in stuff emotionally. It can take in stuff physically, whatever the term is, watching TV, and you can never satiate that feeling. And that's what the splitting off feels like with the kids to me, is just like this hungry ghost, this dad that's missed so many years and minutes and seconds, and well, that's good stuff. Okay, so I think do either of you want to tell a little story so we can kind of like break up the intensity of what we're discussing before we move on to the next question? And the other person will have an opportunity to tell a story later on in the show. Either of you feel the energy to do that right now?
Uh, yeah, so the story again in retrospect, funny, maybe not funny at the time, but my son was from the moment, like literally out of the womb, was Action Jackson. Just wanted to go and do, see the world. It didn't matter what it was. He wanted to go get out of the house and go do. Like get in the car, he wanted to go every time, wanted to go to the bank, wanted to go to the gas station. It didn't matter. So, and sometimes as a parent, you just want to get in the car and just go do something, right? And leave the kids with the other spouse and just kind of get some stuff done off the to-do list. But man, that was not the case with my little guy. And so he would jump in the car. Like sometimes he'd just go out there. This is when he was about, I want to say 5 or 6. He'd, get out in the car, pull the door open, get in himself. And then I think he was still either in a car seat or, needed to strap himself in or whatever. And I'd be running last minute, like, we got to get going. Come on, let's go. And I'd jump in the front seat. And then we had a larger vehicle at the time. And then he'd be running around in the back. And I'd be like, get your seatbelt on, get in the car seat, whatever, blah, blah. And he'd think it was funny that I couldn't reach him, to get him into his car seat or whatever. So, I'd be up there doing what parents do, just like, get in your car seat, we gotta go, all that kind of stuff. And then one time he had me so discombobulated with this exuberance about running around the back of the car that I backed the vehicle into the garage door that was closed. So, so got that replaced. And my ex was like, "How'd you do that?" She was like, "How'd you do that? How'd you back into the door? I just can't understand that." I was like, "Well, Spencer was going crazy. He was so excited. He wanted to go. He was talking about how excited he was to go here and go there, and he wouldn't get in his seat and blah blah blah." Got the garage door fixed. 2 weeks later, my ex is in the car in the same vehicle, is in there. Spencer wants to go go go. He's running around in the car, won't sit down, won't get in his seat, backs into the closed garage door and rips off a mirror. Same vehicle, same garage door that just been fixed. So, and the funny thing about that is it just reminds me of the exuberance of my youngest child, who is a wonderful person and has some great qualities, has some challenges too, but just it reminded me of that part of his personality that's so fun to think about. So anyway, that's my story.
That is funny and awesome. And I'm picturing you backing up and into the thing, and your spouse's reaction, and then her doing it 2 weeks later is beautiful. How fun is that? How fun are those memories? And I just want to say this for anyone that's listening, like I'm watching Stephen talk because his video too, and your face, Stephen, like lit up, your eyes got bigger, you got really, 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 really present. It was really a beautiful moment just to witness those little things and that excitement in you. So thanks for being vulnerable. That was great. And I'm gonna go to you for the same question that I started the show off with Stephen. Is there one thing in particular that really stands out to you, or what not to do that you want to share a little bit about before I go into the other questions that I have? Wow, that is a rich and intense conversation. I had to take several breaths in there, and at the same time, it's just like a magical environment to be in with two people that I care very much about, and that are doing some really great work, and that we can dig into these nuances, and you can see that thing where instead of just thinking someone else is doing something to us, as we dig into stuff and there's a little bit of reflection, folks can start to see their part in the nuances. And this is not to discount that anyone else is not doing anything in the family system, or there's not overlaying trauma or anything like that. That's not what this is about. This is about us taking accountability for who we are, for how we're maturing as adults, and really stepping into our agency, really stepping into being present, really step into being in our lives in every relationship. Even though we're focusing on the kids and the grandkids and the parents and stuff, it's really important to realize this is about every relationship, and this work is life changing. And as we unpack and uncover and discover stuff about our behavior, then every relationship starts to change, and we have the best opportunity to be the best parent possible. And I just want to say, and I've said this before, this interview and this conversation that we're having is parenting, is powerful ninja parenting. Like we're doing some deep, incredible work to give ourselves the best opportunity to have the richest and fullest life. And in doing that, giving our kids that same opportunity and mirroring what that looks like. So I'm so honored to be part of this conversation and this community. And please follow, like, subscribe. A bunch of stuff in the show notes. I can't remember all the stuff we put down there, but definitely check that out. And thank you for coming out to play with us today. And in case anyone hasn't told you yet today, I love you, and I love our community and the places that we're going. Enjoy the day.